Hello, and thank you for joining us on All Things Service Podcast with Nick Lambert. Of course, I am Nick Lambert, and we are talking about all things service throughout any service-driven industry, whether that be plumbers, business owners, people in the food-driven industry, the food environment, the food industry, trade industry, anybody that deals with customer service. That is what we're focusing on with our podcast. So this is my very first episode. I'm very excited to do this. I felt a calling from God just to be able to do this podcast. And he really laid it on my heart to bring in people that serve others. And being a very big believer in servant leadership, I thought, what better way to share with the world various people in various trades throughout the United States. So as we get started, we're going to have, this podcast is going to be really exciting. We're going to bring in guests from all over the world. We're going to bring in people and get different perspectives on what's going on within certain industries that they're experiencing, great advice, and good banter back and forth. Of course, everybody that knows me also knows that I love the 80s. I love the 90s. I have my Back to the Future shirt on today, and I want people to be able to really... we want to integrate some of our 80s and 90s pop culturism into this podcast as well. So I'm really excited that you chose to spend your time with us today for All Things Service podcast with Nick Lambert. So today we have our very first guest, and this is really exciting for me. There are so many different people that I considered for my very first guest, and I couldn't decide. And so I just thought, I'm going to leave it up to God. So I did some praying, and I thought, all right, we're going to figure out who God keeps put on my heart. He kept coming back to a friend of mine named Chad Sheehan. Chad is a very successful entrepreneur, lives in Gillette, Wyoming, owns a couple different businesses, has been a lifelong entrepreneur, and runs and owns WCC, I believe, WCC Restoration out of Casper and Gillette. So we're going to have Chad on, and I really felt like God was just asking me to bring Chad on because Chad's got an amazing story about faith, about forgiveness, and I just couldn't find a better person that, in my opinion, to bring on for our first episode to show the world what we want to do here with this podcast. So this is going to be a weekly podcast, and if you want to be part of this podcast, if you know people that you would like to see on this podcast, please reach out to me, and I would love to get them on. So without further ado, I'm going to give you a little bit of information on Chad. Chad is a business owner. He has ran multiple businesses, including being a barber, monument company, where I assume that they build monuments and maybe gravestones. Very uber successful. Chad also owns and operates Chad also owns and operates. He's the founder of Life with Laughter, which he's going to tell us a little bit more about. And Chad also is a comedian. He travels around to different churches and goes to different locations, corporate events, speaking and sharing his comedy. He lives in Gillette, Wyoming. He's been blessed to be married to his wife, Dawn, for 28 years. He also has two children, Sage and Spencer. And he's going to just tell us a little bit more about himself and his life. And I'm really excited to get in. So without further ado, Mr. Chad, welcome to our show. And so happy to have you as a guest today.
Well, thanks for having me, Nick. This is exciting for me when you reached out. You know, we met in the world of restoration. You open your doors at your location in Billings, Montana, to other restoration companies, which was amazing to me, because there's some competitors out there that would never do that. You have an unbelievable team. Your facility, just everything is top notch. And we met, and we realized right off the bat that we have something in common beyond restoration, and that's a relationship with Christ. And so that has just impacted us. I've called you. He says I'm uber successful. I have some great people that I work with. My success is in people, and you have your facility is so much better and bigger. It's an amazing, I mean, but you are always willing, and the reason that Nick and I become friends is because we're both an open book. We're willing for anybody at any time to give us a call, and Nick has never not helped me. So I appreciate you having me on here. I do want to tell people right off the bat that I am an idiot. So like, I know you can edit things, but if I like just stone out on you because I forgot what I was talking about, it's happened to me my entire life. And so just so you know, I talk about when I was younger, I used to do that. I could be telling a story and man, people would be excited and really listening. I'd sneeze and I'd forget about everything I was talking about. And now that we're getting older, we just mentioned that we needed glasses and stuff. And as we're getting older now, when I sneeze, my friends' minds are catching up to mine, and now they forget what we're talking about. And I'm sure we're gonna have a great time with this.
I'm in the same boat. So if our listeners and our viewers out there that are watching and listening to us, if they all of a sudden see us go in a different direction and it's like we kind of forgot what we're talking about, that's a lot of my personality too. I am a little ADD. Of course, friends closest to me would probably say I'm a lot ADD,
Right.
but yeah, well, thank you so much for joining me, Chad. So, I love, how we connected, how we met right away. And it's been an honor just to watch your business flourish from one location in Gillette, Wyoming, to your second location, to Casper, Wyoming. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into the restoration business and what prompted you to open a second location in the great state of Wyoming that you're in?
Yeah. Well, it started. I'm an entrepreneur. That's just it. It's a sickness. Most of us that have it, I mean, there's no cure for it. And we started. We had a cleaning company. Well, I was a barber, so I was a barber for about 15 years. And in my barber shop, a guy that owned a small restoration company, like he was big at one time, but it dwindled down to just him and one helper. Always told me I should buy him out.
Oh.
So we, so that's kind of how that went. And then we had owned a large janitorial rest or company, and then this opportunity came up, and that's how I got into it. I'm not afraid of. I'll buy anything service. I mean, it's funny that's the kind of name of the podcast, but because it's dealing with people and it's dealing with loving and serving people. So I wasn't afraid of it, but I knew nothing about it, and there was so much to learn. And so I was thankful that there's people like you out there that walk me through it. There's actually a local competitor of mine that grew up with my brother. I could call him at any time too, and it was amazing the amount of people that would help out with that.
It isn't that just absolutely funny? Because I have the same thing. When I first started out, I started as a cleaning company as well, and I think I did know that about you. But I also I got into carpet cleaning and billings, and I was green. I, had went through the certifications. I spent a lot of time learning, but I actually had a competitor that came up to me and said, "Hey, Nick, heard a lot of great things about you. I get overflow work that I can't take care of, and I want to send you some work. And oh, by the way, here's my personal cell phone number. Call me if you ever have questions, because I've made a lot of mistakes, and if I can help you not make those mistakes, it was his way of giving back." And so I had a competitor. His name's Bryce. Katie owns Bryce's Master Clean, and a little shout out for Bryce. But if it wasn't for Bryce, I mean, the amount of stupid mistakes that I would have made when I was younger. So I love that, because I think that also sets you up for who you are in, okay, well, I need to also help other people out, opposed to, well, this is my competitor and I don't want to have anything to do with them, I'm not going to help them. Opposed to that, you're actually, hey, you know what? If I can help them and I can come along the side of them, it's part of servant leadership, which you kind of talked about. So anyways, didn't mean to cut you off. Let's get back to your story, but I just thought that was interesting that we both had a lot of that and the same thing in common.
Absolutely. And I started the carpet cleaning, but we were at odds because I was low moisture, and we know how steam guys versus low moisture are. But, That will be only for the carpet cleaning industry. They'll get it. Everybody else is going, I don't even know what you guys are talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So no, and then we just felt like there was a need in Casper. I was a barber there for several years, and we sold our cleaning company to fund that, and so then we moved to a second location, and I've just been so lucky to have the people. Of course, you and I have similar stories on. There's times that we get the wrong one, and there's times that we give them too much power, and then we have to take that back, which is not fun. But overall, you and I both have been blessed with some amazing people to basically run the company. We both because of you. I mean, I hired Clark, who was a big part of that. I mean,
Yeah.
I hired a ops manager when I had 2 employees.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Clark came in and I said, I'm not going to build this company around me. I have owned enough service companies that I'm like, I can't do it. And I was in a position that I didn't have to. So I was like, yeah. So I put it. So Clark says, you've got to hire ops guy because I'm not the ops guy. I'm the dreamer, right? I need an integrator.
You're the
Yeah.
visionary. Yep. Yep.
Yep.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
so that's how I started, very small, very, very small. And then we just grown it. And it's kind of fun because the guy that I hired in Casper had left another restoration company 6, 8 months before that. He was very hurt over that. And he called me at like 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday to say, I see you're hiring and we're going to put this other company out of business. And I said, well, you don't know me, but you won't be a fit in my company. And so he kept bugging me. So I met with him. He was just hurt, but I says, you know what? We're going to get market share off of loving people. We're going to do market share off of training our people to love other people. And that's how we're going to get it. We're not going to do this. I want to sink the other ship.
Oh,
It's that we want to represent. So he's come on board and his faith is, we've walked through a lot of stuff together, but it's been amazing to where he's transformed from being that hurt to just absolutely loving people. And not to knock, I actually used to cut the hair in Casper of the Surf Pro owner, John. So when I ended up back there, John and I get together. He's a franchise owner. He's a preferred vendor. They push to him as much as I'd love to hate him. He's a great guy. He's been in my building a lot of times. I've been in his, and the only difference is I always told him, I said, their slogan, it says like it never even happened, and I says, but it did, and it happened to a person, and that's some of
absolutely.
some of
Absolutely.
the difference is no, it did, and guess what? At the end of it, if we can't love or take a chance of praying with somebody or just know that we're there for them, um, and I don't know if now's the time. I mean, I can tell what I've been fed some of the stories because as anybody that owns a business knows, it's not easy, and some of the things that keep me going isn't the financial gain. It's because that money can be made, but I'm telling you, what keeps me going is there was a water damage. It was late at night. It's first floor raining down into the basement, and our guys. There's like 4 of our guys there, and there's a one of our techs sees the wife in a bedroom crying, which happens a lot. We know people are shook up. Well,
Time.
he
Yeah.
went in there because it is happening to her right now. Now we know things are going to be okay. He walked in and she said, my son committed suicide and this was his room and it's getting wet. And he sat with her for like an hour and a half while the rest of the guys were working. And our culture is that's okay. That matters more. And so, and I always get choked up because those are the reasons that we're in the business. And he sat with her, he prayed with her. Um, he made a difference in just allowing Christ to be seen in us. Because, the world says, get it done, do a good job. No, all that stuff. It was that moment. Another one, a guy went and we did a sewer damage. He went to check it on a Sunday. the mom of the place had passed away. The daughter and granddaughter were there, and this guy that was running from God when he came to work for us, ended up praying with them. He kind of come back to God. He was living for God, and he says, well, Chad, he says, so he tells our group chat the story, right? And so he tells this, and then he ends up being so he says, hey, by the end of it, we were all crying, but that's what matters.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, you made a really valid point that, a lot of times people, that's what they think it's about. They think it's about, making money. We're all in business. We're all in business. We're not nonprofits, right? So we have to keep the doors open.
Yeah.
But it's also being empathetic and sympathetic to those situations. And when you have a staff that responds the way that your staff does, that's what sets you apart from some of the other people, some of the big franchises, because sometimes big franchises, not all of them, there are some really good people in the big franchise world as well. But a lot of times with the big franchises, it becomes your number. Let's get you done. Let's get you on to the next one. And so being empathetic and sympathetic to not only your staff, but the people in which you serve, that's what it's all about. Which I think there's so many moments in our business, and I know you're the same way, where we help somebody or we walk into a room where somebody has committed suicide and there's a cleanup that needs to be done, and that's a really tough thing to deal with, and especially it's tough for anybody. But I think people that are in faith, I think it's even harder, because when I walk into a room like that, I think, what was this person feeling? What was so horrible in their life? What depths of despair did they reach that would cause them to go through something like this? And so it's really tough. And, people in our industry, that's what we do, is we serve people in situations. I like to say that we actually see people at their very worst, and we aren't just restorers. We come along the side and we're counselors to them. And I think that that's what gives you a platform, and my company a platform, is that we are able to allow them to see Christ through us and through our staff. And I know that you don't have not everybody on either one of our staffs are both people of faith. But what we find is people that are on our staff, they become empathetic, and even if they may not be believers in God, they still want to help that person, and they still want to hold that person's hand. They still want to allow that person to cry on their shoulder during those tough times. Chad, I want to jump into a story. When I first met Chad, one of the things that caught me off guard is I was told, you got to talk to Chad about his story. Chad's got an amazing story, and this story has always infatuated me. It's really, I gotta be honest, there's not a lot of people, I think, in this world that would do what you did and could have the level of forgiveness that you had. But I'll let Chad, it's your story to tell. So, why don't you tell us I'll give you a little bit of a lead in out there for people listening. Years ago, when Chad was a barber, he was encountered by a situation, and in the results of those actions and how Chad handled that, he found healing through the whole process. So, Chad, why don't you jump in and give us a little bit of insight, and tell us that story. Tell us about what happened.
Well, I think to start out though, I think you're right. I don't think many people do this, but it wasn't because of me. It was only because of Christ. I can promise you that. So what happened is there was 4 people involved. I was barbering one day. I was always a busy barber. Like, I did 40 haircuts a day. I mean, I had an hour and a half wait all the time. So it was busy. And I see somebody with some masks look in the window, and I didn't think of it because it was 10 o'clock. It's not a common time that you're going to rob somebody. But so 3 people rushed in. There was a driver, we found out later, but rushed in and arm robbed me. And without going into detail, I mean, they like slammed a gun against my head and forced me in the back room. And by forced, I mean, like, they told me to get in the back room, but there were 3 guns at me, so I gladly, like, went there just as quickly as possible. But so then there was just like an innocence. I mean, you see it on TV, but when it happens, it was like he sat there in the bathroom and put a gun to my forehead and told me to start counting, and it jacked with me. First of all, it jacked with me. I couldn't remember my own birthday when the cops came. I mean, it was just something, an adrenaline rush. I'm not designed like that, but it put me into a spin, and it challenged everything that I had ever experienced. So
Chad, let me ask you,
yeah.
when it happened, what's going through your mind? Are you thinking that this might be it? Are you thinking that uh, it it's I may come to meet my maker? Were you a believer at the time? I mean, walk me through some of that stuff.
So I was, and at first, to be honest with you, all I was thinking is, don't shoot me in the head. Like, that would probably be the place that'd be safest for me. But I mean, but don't shoot me in the head. And so then when they put me in the bathroom, they told me to count to this like 6,000, and I could still hear rummaging, but then it kind of went quiet, and I actually was already on my knees because that's where they put me, and I said, Lord, I might be seeing you soon. And I opened up the door to look. And as I started to stand up, 2 Army recruiters that come to me were walking in for a haircut. And I didn't know if it was them still. And and I grabbed the phone and ran out, and they said, Chad, it looks like you just seen a ghost. I said, man, I was just armed robbed. So it was very big. And usually when I talk about it on stage, I minimize that part because I want to maximize what Christ has done. But it was like, it was very real. And I get a joke about it now, but at the time, I mean, they diagnosed me with post-traumatic stress disorder. I mean, I remember laying in bed. I was never a guy that was looking for a fight. I always wondered in my life, could I shoot somebody, if I really had to? All these things that came in, and I realized that when it came down to it, I could. And I didn't like that about myself, but I started packing a gun. Because it took a month for them
This really messed with you. It messed with you
to the core.
Is this going to happen to me again? Could this possibly, am I safe in my own town anymore?
Yeah.
And you still have to go back and work the same place, right?
Yeah. And just on some of the funny stuff that I get to talk about is now, like, my cop buddies, because I did a bunch of friends. When I came the next morning, I opened my shop about 4:30 in the morning. So when I started, I parked across the street. As I started to get near the shop, of course, it's dark. I'm scared to death, but I'm like, okay, Lord, I got to go to work. And as I approach, some of my cop buddies had drawn a outline of a dead body in front of my door on my side. And I'm like, maybe too soon, guys. I about peed myself, and I'm like, I don't want to be here. And so that kind of stuff, but it rocked me I they were changing some water stuff in our subdivision, and I started getting a water hammer. I thought somebody was running down the stairs, and I just about shot the hot water tank. I mean, there was some times my wife was just like, it just wasn't me. So when we talk about forgiving them or walking through this, it was a process of I hated the sin in my life because for the first time I had some anger and some hatred towards people that I'd never experienced, and I wanted to kill them. Like I I plotted. I sat there and thought, man, these cops and these detectives are good enough friends of mine. If they catch them, maybe I'll be lucky enough that they'll say, hey, Chad, I got the, like movie stuff. Like,
Yeah,
I got this, yeah, your file or whatever, the serial number is filed off. You can come and shoot them. And I was like, in my heart, I was like, sweet, I would go and shoot those people, what they did to me. So, but I hated the sin more than I hated them. And so I was like, Lord, I don't know what to do here. I'm a wreck, but I've got to figure this out. So luckily I'm surrounded with, a lot of my friends are pastors, a lot of my friends are Christian people, and no matter what they said, it wasn't connecting though. You know, it was like, Chad, just, you know, and it would tick me off, to be honest with you, because just get through this, man, you'll be there. And even though it was truth, I mean, I was at a rage. So if now's a good time to fast forward, they catch them. There, I find out that
So
there's,
how long after the, sorry, I don't mean, I'm
no, no,
curious.
yeah.
How long after the robbery is it until they finally catch these people?
So it was over a month.
Okay, wow.
So
Wow.
over a month. I'm wondering if they're going to come back.
Well, if these guys are out on the streets, they could be
Yeah,
doing it again to somebody
yeah,
else. That's a
yeah,
long process. Wow.
yeah. So, but when they catch him, I find out the guy, the driver, was a customer of mine.
Oh,
And then he had talked these three younger kids into, they were 18, 19, and 24, and he was 34. He talked them into it. But then there's a whole twist to that. You find out then they were masked, right? There was a brother and sister involved. So the brother only joined in though because the sister called him and said, "Hey, they were from a really tough uh, house growing up. So he was like there to protect his sister. So he agreed to do an armed robbery, be in the just to be there because she called and says, I can't trust these people that I'm doing this with. Will you join me?" And he's like, "Absolutely."
wow.
So we end up in court. Luckily, my dad was a judge and attorney, but I know those. I actually cut the judge's hair, and so when they usually do sentencing, so we went through first of all a week-long trial, which was horrible because they bring up stuff and they have you on the stand, and the defense attorney, because the driver tried to fight it, even though the three that came in testified against him, but it took a week of being on the stand and being hammered. But after that, at sentencing, it was like God just said, "Hey, I'm going to close down this big courtroom, and we're going to, because of, I think, a water damage, to be honest, and I'm going to have you in this small courtroom where there's only 5 like rows of pews, and there's going to be like 15 or 20 guys getting sentenced for felonies." And they were one of the first ones, and I'm like, okay, God, I need this strength because I've already kind of worked through this forgiveness thing. I've already worked through, okay, God.
At this point, are you wanting, at this point, is the thought of killing them or trying to get revenge even on your mind anymore?
No, now it's 100% um, the way I've always lived my life as a Christian. It's like, I am a wretched. I mean, I was just reading in Romans today where Paul keeps talking about like how I've, throughout the New Testament, you know, I'm not worthy. I don't deserve. Only you and me is good. And so I've lived a life kind of like, I've been forgiven. I'm thankful for that enough now. I can look through the pain and say, I've forgiven you. And so that's what I got to speak. Now, they usually only allow you to speak towards the sentencing time or what impact, but the judge knew me well enough to know that's not what I do. So I said, "Hey guys, just don't let this define you. We've all made mistakes. I've been forgiven. I forgive you. Just don't let this define you." So, uh,
Wow.
yeah. So the crazy thing is afterwards, the mom caught me in the hallway and said, "You did not have to be that nice to my kids." And I said, "I did for my sake, my
Wow.
relationship." So
Wow.
yeah, weird. So anyway, so then if you want to like fast forward to that, so like we get through that, um, there's the girl gets sentenced 3 to 5 years. She gets out in like 3 years or something, and I'm walking through Walmart and I see her, and I'm like, there's a panic because usually the advocates really keep you informed, like, hey, they've been changed from this prison to this prison, and I didn't know she was out, and she's surrounded by friends talking, and it just shook me, and so I told my wife, I said, we got to go. So then about 2 weeks go by. Now I know she's out, and we're at a Christian tough man competition where they're blowing up water bottles, breaking bats, and then they'll present the gospel, and
Yeah.
I see who now I know as Crystal Garrison over there in the crowd. And we get an intermission, and I look at my wife. I said, I'm going to go talk to her. And she said, no, you're not. But I went and talked to her, and I said, hey, Crystal. I says, are you Crystal? Yep. I said, you know who I am? She says, no. I said, I'm Chad the barber. She said, I'm so sorry. I said, Crystal, like I told you years ago, I've forgiven you. I want to know if this defined you or where you're at. And she says, I'm a changed woman. She introduced me. She was pregnant at the time of the robbery. She had her daughter with her. Her fiance was with her. And so I was doing comedy. This was 20 years ago. I was doing comedy, and I said, hey, I would love for you to be at a show. Forgetting that 15 minutes of my show was about the robbery. And I'm like, so I'm up there, I'm in the middle of doing my thing, and I'm like, oh, Mo, I can't quite do what I usually do because these people are in the audience. But
you gotta tweak it a little bit now.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So I get a phone call. So I'm still barbering. I'm doing some comedy. I get a phone call from the mom. Is this Chad the barber? Yeah, it is. Crystal has been diagnosed with a brain tumor, and they're going to shave her head. And she said that she will only do that if you come up here and shave her head. And so just the way God works, right? It doesn't make sense to the world. So I go up there, I shave her head. We cry together. We pray together.
Wow.
It was,
So you're literally one of the people that armed you at gunpoint.
uh-huh.
You're now shaving her head.
Yeah.
She's getting ready to go on an epic battle of her own.
Yeah. Which she lost and died at 23 years old.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So yeah, so what a blessing. I mean, the thing that people don't realize is living in obedience and living in faith. There's a blessing that money can't buy. All the things that we chase in this world, you can't buy this. You can't buy the moment of being able to see Christ work in your own life because you're willing to be obedient.
Right.
And so what a blessing. So then years later, like 15 years later, I'm on Facebook and I'm like, I'm going to look up the people that robbed me, the rest of them. So I couldn't find two of them, but I found Crystal's brother, Charlie. And I'm like, okay.
I wanted to ask before you jump into that.
Yeah.
Did you continue to keep in contact with Crystal throughout her fight with cancer?
I didn't, because she died really soon after.
Wow. So it was like a quick, she's diagnosed and it is gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it must have been a pretty bad terminal diagnosis.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what I know of it anyways. I guess I haven't really talked to Charlie about it much. But yeah.
But anyways, okay, so now you're looking and you find her brother.
Yeah, and so I messaged him, and because humor,
The guys that robbed you too.
yeah, oh yeah, he wasn't the one that hit me with the gun in my head, or he hit me, but he's one that was holding a 44 with an 8.5-inch barrel that they called the Dirty Harry gun during the trial. So his sister held a sawed-off shotgun. So I mean, so yeah, so I said, hey, is this the Charlie I first met in my barber shop? That's how I messaged him. And it took him like a week to respond. And he says, yes, I'm so sorry. I says, Charlie, I'm over this, man. It's been a lot of years. I just want to know, are you a redeemed man? Are you changed? Have you let this define you? And he didn't. He's a Christian. It is so amazing. I mean, so I said, hey, he's in Casper. We don't have a facility there yet, but oh, maybe we did, but I didn't go there that much or whatever. So I said, hey, when I'm in town next, let's get together for lunch. So we did. Man, I'm telling you what.
With the guy who robbed Chad. I mean, most of our listeners out there got to be thinking this man is absolutely insane. You have lunch with the guy who 20-some odd years before held Dirty Harry to your head and could have ended your life. Have your life in the palm of his hands.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And you're sitting breaking bread with this guy.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Tell me about it.
So it was awesome, man. We sat there, and this guy was truly redeemed. I mean, he has a son. He's married. He had this job in the construction world for a long time, and he's truly a great guy. Like he tells me at this, he says, if my sister would ask me again, I'd do it every time. I mean, there was no hesitation in his love for his sister. That's the only reason he did it. And so we're talking, and he's telling me how in the construction world where he's working, it was really tough because trying to be a Christian and their language and stuff, and he's just right in the pit of it, right? And he's just telling me. So I get out in the truck when we're done, and I call my wife. I says, "Man, I want to work with this guy someday." And so I'm like, well, how cool would that be? That story, I mean, right? That shows Christ.
That is a full
Yeah,
circle.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So he did. We keep in contact, and like 3 months later, I'm like, hey Charlie, what do you think about coming to work here? And he worked for us a little over a year, and then we had the slowdown. And he actually sacrificed his job for another guy. He says, I said, Charlie, you would be the guy I keep, but it's going to look different because we're going from a lot of employees to not as many, and you're going to be on call all the time. It's going to feel like, and he goes, you know what? Let's let another guy stay on. I'll go back to the construction. So
Wow. Chad, that is, I'm getting just chills thinking about it because the amount of love and the amount of really just showing Christ through you that you really, really showcase in this situation. I mean, wow. A guy that held a gun to your head now comes to work for you for a little over a year. That's crazy. Most
yeah.
people would be telling you you are in don't take this the wrong way, but you're insane for doing
Right.
that. But I think most believers out there would say, wow, I need to be like Chad in that type of situation.
Right.
Because you know, we talk in life about I need to lead by faith and I need to also show Christ through me. And you want to talk about treating somebody like Christ treated them? You want to talk would have treated them, forgiving them, giving them other opportunities, and not only that, to actually trust this person enough to come work with that. That's just
And
an amazing
I
story.
think he still has a door code to our building because he had to borrow some chemical the other day to help his mom out, and so
And
he,
you're like, I just go and get what you
yeah,
need.
just go in. Yeah, what do I have that you need? So
Well, that's an amazing story, Chad, and I really, really thank you for sharing it because that's just, again, that's I knew about Crystal. I did not know about the guy working
yeah,
with you.
yeah.
And
And
it,
there's actually there is a cool YouTube video on my website. I mean that people can go. It's Charlie and Chad. Um, it really, I mean, I share it because I share it with a lot of people that are like cops and stuff because they get to where they only see the bad. I
yeah,
share it with people that have gone through some really tough times to say, hey, this is what Christ can do. Chad didn't do anything in this. This is what Christ can do if you're obedient. And so those are and just trust. And it doesn't always work out like that, right? Two out of the four I've never contacted. Charlie did say that the guy that kind of orchestrated this was still bitter. They ran into each other after prison, and he's still blaming him. He's the one that fought it. So it doesn't always have to end that way, but it's
yeah.
our duty to forgive them. Their response, I got some cool responses, right? I mean, I was blessed with some cool responses, but you don't always do
No,
that.
you don't always get that. And
Yeah,
we're such a broken world. And I
yeah,
mean, I know so many people who have been victims of abuse or neglect or, you know, theft or so many other things. And yet just to choose to forgive them. Even as an owner, even as a business owner, you know, there's times where we have staff members who grow bitter and leave us. Uh, and it becomes whenever they talk about you or your company, it's a toxic. It's well, you know, they did this and they did that. And you know what? I love them. I treat them with kindness. I still reach out. You know, actually, one of the people today, it's their birthday, and this person, I was uh, very close to at one point in my life. They worked with us, and this person has a very bitter attitude towards me, but it's also not knowing the entirety of the situation and why we did what we had to do. But I still wished her a happy birthday and wished her well. And that's who I am, because I want people to see Christ through me. And I think that if everybody out there, like you said, not everybody's going to have a happy ending. This individual is probably never going to be close with me again.
Right.
Probably never going to come back and want to be a friend of mine again. And sometimes it's hard to forgive. Uh, I always say it's okay to forgive. I'm a big forgiver. I'll forgive you. And forgiveness does also mean to a point of forgetting as well, but it doesn't mean you allow yourself to be walked on or put in those situations again, And so,
Right. You can distance yourself. I mean, that's regardless of their response. And so God has put a lot of people in my life that I've got to walk through this with. And it's one of those things. I tried to do a program at one time to just but it was too short. And I'm like, man, there's people out there but the sense of it. But I've walked through, and it doesn't always end up like sometimes the guy that molested you is dead.
yeah. Yeah.
So sometimes the things that are really tough, you cannot, but you do, that does not mean that you build a relationship with that person again.
No,
that doesn't always happen. So
no, absolutely.
plus when it does.
Yeah. Well, let's jump a little bit. So you mentioned that he was one of the individuals you had to downsize. Obviously, a lot of restoration companies, a lot of viewers are in that realm. And I think a lot of people in the service-driven industry in its entirety are looked at 2024 as a year where they've had a lot of hurt, a lot of confusion. There's been a lot of change, especially not just the service industry, trying to find good staff, but also in the restoration world, dealing with insurance companies, higher deductibles, and what we're seeing is across the nation, a lot of restoration companies have had to make that tough decision. Do I keep trying to maintain a bigger company? Do I go smaller? Walk me through kind of what's the state of the business that you see, the state of the industry that you see right now. What are you experiencing between your two locations in Wyoming? Walk us through some of that. Give us pull back the veil a little bit.
So we're not huge. We had 13 employees. We dropped down to 8. I always hold on too soon. I'm not being a dreamer, being things. I mean, it takes every bit of my being to follow numbers and do things. I've just owned enough companies that I'm not that guy that's ever going to be a huge company, because I don't have that CEO in me as far as it's just not who I am. So, but we got to a point to where it came abrupt. I was keeping all these guys. We guarantee 40 hours a week. We do all these things to try to keep good people. And man, it was such a tough time, because we were coupled with, we ran out of money. Basically, we owed a bunch of taxes, and then we had a guy that owed us a substantial amount of money for a big fire damage that went to jail.
Oh, wow.
So we had a week that was over $150,000 turnaround.
Oh,
and we were like, I don't have any more money to keep guys on. We got to make some changes. So that kind of happened. There's feelings that are hurt. Like you said, there's guys that but why would you keep this guy over that? Why would you make these decisions? And as an owner, you have to make those decisions at times, as much as you hate it. So I just made the decision. And so where we're at now, though, so that we kind of went through that last March, about a year ago. And so we've kept the 8 on. It looks different.
It's different.
Yeah, it feels different. I was fortunate enough, only with 13 employees, I really didn't put more than about 10 hours a week into my business. I mean, I had guys running it. Clark, when he first met me, he's like, I've never seen a company this small that the owner isn't working. I said, because one of my goals every year is to be available because
Right.
God forgot work. So, and to speak and to comedy. And
Yeah.
so now I've been in the field the more last month than I've been in the field for 5 years.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
which is a blessing too, because I like it,
Yeah.
you know, you know. But I still have the key people. I could still leave. It's just now we're shorthanded enough that it will prolong the work,
Yeah.
probably unfairly to the client. So then we
Yeah.
I'm in the field, but now it's good. It's good. We just lost a guy, kind of a tough feelings thing. That I'm hoping same thing. I'm hoping like, hey, we can walk through this together. I've reached out. It's early on. So we'll see. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. But we're just gonna we just trust that like right now, this is where we're at.
Yeah.
God's in control.
Yeah.
It's not a surprise to him no matter what happens.
No, it's always a
So
surprise to us, but
yeah,
and I'm always kind of like, okay, well, this wasn't a surprise to you. You knew this was going to happen, but you still let me go through it, you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
But obviously, that's because that's where our growth comes
yeah.
from.
That's
You
right.
know, you scale the mountains and you get to the top, and it's like you look back and you say, wow, look at what we accomplished. But it's in the peaks and valleys. You don't do your growing at the peak. You do
That's
your
right.
growing in the valleys.
And so James 1 is one of my favorite, to find great joy during the trials. And
Yes.
and some of being faithful and obedient long enough, it's not because of me, but it's just a practice of becoming who I am. I'm thankful when things like this happen because I'm like, Lord, thank you, because I needed God a lot less when we were 33% more. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And
Yep. You,
so those are the things that you can.
but it's almost like that old cliche saying that you don't pray when things are good, but when things are bad, God's the first person that you're begging and asking. And
That's right.
obviously, I try to pray all the time, but you're
Sure.
absolutely right. When you are going through that road and you are in the valley, you're going to do far more praying and trying to trust in God than when you're standing at the top. And look, I've been on many, 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 many valleys and many, many, many peaks. And I always think, okay, this is the biggest peak I've climbed. I can't get any bigger. And then all of a sudden, oh, here we go. We're going down into that valley. And then God
Right.
works on me. And then
Yeah.
guess what? There's a new mountain for me to climb because I'm a lot like you. I'm a visionary. I'm an entrepreneur. And it's not that I get bored. I this is gonna, and I don't want this to sound bad because I'm sure we have former clients that are listening right now. I never loved the restoration industry. Okay, I never liked fighting with insurance companies.
Yeah.
I loved the people that worked with us, the people that we served, the adjusters that we did get along with, that we got. Those are the things that I really enjoy. I never loved the science behind drying and, trying to figure out the ratios of grains per pound and all that other stuff that's going to bore all of the people out there listening.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I never cared about that, but it was about the people. It was about serving the people. And so a lot like you, I'm like, okay, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm like, well, what's next? And so that's always kind of on my mind. Chad, if you could go back and, get into the DeLorean here, okay? You're going to
Yeah.
get into the
Which
DeLorean.
I've sat in yours.
And I still have it. Yes.
Good. Yeah.
So for those out there asking, I actually do have a Back to the Future DeLorean. Looks just like the replica, and drivable, everything. And that's a whole.
Talk to you. It's a whole next level for those that really don't know. I mean, this is like the exact replica, not like, oh, I kind of did a good job. This is the car.
We were blessed to have some really good people help build that. And actually, a friend of mine, Vern Ball, lives in Montana, and Vern is one of those guys. He's kind of a visionary, but he also kind of picked up what I wanted to do, and he's like, I'm going to make it happen. And so, without Vern, I never would have been able to build it to the level that we built it. So, but I digress. If I could give you my car and I could say, Chad, you're going to go back 10 years ago and see 10 years ago Chad and visit him, what would you tell him? What advice would you give him?
You know, Nick, it's almost humbling to ask that, because I was asked that the other day, like, if by an integrator that I have in the speaking world, if you knew you wouldn't fail this year, what would you do if you knew you wouldn't fail? And I feel blessed that my relationship with God, I don't know, I would tell, but I've told myself this for so long. I'm almost 50. And so if I could go back and tell the 20-year-old, 10 years ago, I still had it, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. If I could tell that guy, I would say, you know what? Live out what you say is important, and truly trust that God is it's going to be okay. And it's not going to look like we want it to. It's not going to be, we're going to see people around us that seem like they're making it. And then, Lord, why? The why? Satan loves the why, but why is this not happening sooner to me? Why hasn't my comedy made it to the level I have, even though I've done it for 20 years? I'm okay with where it's at. I want to build a house so bad. My parents built houses. If it never happens, today I'm okay. The 20-year-old me would have done whatever it took. And not in an ungodly way, because I mean, I was still
Right.
preaching back then. So, but my family did sacrifice. I had to be right. I had to find some worth in my works versus finding it in him. So that's what I would tell the younger. But to be honest with you, I don't know. I wouldn't have listened to myself any more than I listened to any of these guys, because it's a process, right? And we always expect these young kids that are coming into this business to act different than what we did off of our wisdom, and they have to experience it. They have to, I think it's the God journey. I had to experience that chasing sin over and over and over led to the same darkness before I came to a place that I said, enough is enough. It's a question probably going to be answered different than most people, because I wouldn't probably go back and change a lot, because I had to go through some of that stuff to be who I am. But that's, if I was given a young guy, I would say, take that moment, just take that moment and realize, I know it's not going to change because you're broke. You're going to chase things. I mean, you have to, you have to work 80-hour weeks. You have to do that, because if that's what you're going to chase, but take that moment and be present if you can, because I could never be present with my family during those times of working those hours. Be present for just those moments. If you get 10 minutes at the end of the evening, be present and don't just talk to your wife about that. So I guess that's what advice I would give.
I love it. I love it. Part of the calling I feel like God's placed on my life, and there's going to be a lot more coming out later this year. But I feel like there's been a really big calling on my life to, and there's a lot of reasons for this, but I feel like it's more about being there than it is trying to acquire things. It's about giving back and giving generously versus having a life of stress and having a life where you're like, hey, I can't be there at my daughter's volleyball game. I can't be there. A lot of business owners that are not just in our industry, it's all sorts of industries, they can never be there. And it's because they live, eat, breathe their business. Their business is their main priority. And look, I get that. You don't want your business to fail. What if there was a different way where you could actually live? It's almost like a lifestyle change, right? You live this life where you're not chasing the golden ring, but you're chasing time. Because the one thing I say you cannot buy more of is time. You want a new house? Go make enough money to get it. You want to, you can pretty much accomplish almost anything you want to accomplish in life. But the one thing you can't get is time. When you're out of time, you're out of time. And so, you know what? When I'm older, when my kids are older, my kids aren't going to look back and say, "Hey, you know what? Yeah, dad worked 80 hours a week, and it was fun because that one summer he took and was able to take us on a vacation,
Right.
to
Right.
Disney." They're barely going to remember that. They're going to remember more. My dad wasn't there, or when I needed help, my dad couldn't help me because he was too busy. And I don't want that to be my legacy. I don't want that to be my epitaph. I want people to be able to, I want my kids, I want the people closest to me to say, you know what? He was always there. And so I think you can either live a life where you chase after the wealth
Yep.
and the vision that is the American dream, or you can live a life of chasing freedom. And it's
Yep.
not so much chasing freedom, it's getting freedom and choosing that over this.
Right. And I think you're talking mainly to entrepreneurs on that because they're
Yeah.
like our technicians. I mean, and so let's clarify a little bit just because, and I don't want people to realize in our world, like the sickness of entrepreneurship of chasing them, it can look different, but a lot of times it's after you buy the DeLorean, right? I mean, it's after you, I mean, it's
Yeah.
that process, but
It's
and you can get there quicker by listening to guys like you, by listening to guys like Clark.
yeah.
But our technicians that are sitting there just trying to survive and put food on the table, their hours don't, but you can still pour into them the importance. Like we do a men's Bible study every Friday morning at our shop, and at both locations. And it's something that we really try to push for. Not everybody comes. Sometimes guys will come for a while and then don't. And there's guys in Gillette, there's guys from the community because just get to know me and go, hey, I hear about this. And then they come. But that part, so that's talking to the technician. Don't ever forget on as an entrepreneur of being empathetic, not to only our clients, but that guy that's working for you for 25 bucks an hour
Yes.
is just surviving and he's working and but to teach him to go home and love those moments. Hey, you're going to miss ball games. Your legacy is going to be different. You're going to show that to your family that, hey, work is important and you have to do this, but you can be present as long as these other things come into play. Put God first. That will be your legacy. My dad worked hard, but guess what? He loved the Lord and he loved me.
Yeah.
What a greater thing for a technician to have than that too. So I knew
That's
who you were talking about, but I'm always like,
Yep, that's good to clarify. So again, we've had some really fantastic conversation. I want to touch a little bit. I want to. This isn't so much pop culture of the 80s and 90s that's mainstream, but you are a fan of a lot of Christian music, but you actually like the Gaithers vocal band, which I actually love the Gaithers as well.
oh, you do? Okay.
Oh gosh, when I grew up, my grandma always, my mom's mom always had the Gaithers on TV. So I can remember being a teenager and coming in, after mowing her lawn or just being out there visiting, and the Gaithers was on every afternoon, and that's what we did. And we listened to them, and so I grew up with a lot of those voices and the familiar
Yeah.
faces and everything.
DVDs, buddy. My mom has lots of DVDs. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is awesome. And for those of you that don't know who the Gators vocal band are, they are an amazing. I would call them gospel band. They do a lot of acapella stuff. Their harmonies are just off the charts. And actually, I don't know if you know this. You probably do, but Mark Lowry,
As a comedian. Yeah.
one of the members of Gators. He's no longer with them, but he was with him for a very long time. And for those of you that don't know Mark Lowry, you probably know the song "Mary Did You Know?" Very, very, very popular song around Christmas. Well, it obviously is a Christmas song, but very, very popular song, has been a staple for I want to say 30 years. I'm probably not fully correct on that, but he got to start in the Gaithers band. And so being part of that and then coming and writing an amazing piece like that. So you may not know who the Gaithers are, but you probably have heard of Mark Lowry. If you haven't heard of Mark Lowry, you probably have heard of Mary Did You Know? And so that's one of the things that every episode I want to dump some sort of fun, useless fact that, I call it useless facts that you really don't know that you needed to know or that you wanted to know, but now you're glad that you did know. So,
Right. Well, and he's a comedian, so
yes,
Mark is the
yes.
guy, yeah, and so he was just blessed. Like I was not blessed with the music side, but he's a goofball. He's one of my favorites. Yep. So
Yeah, yeah, a solid guy. Then maybe I'll reach out and try to get him on our podcast one of
yeah, there you go. Absolutely. And he's the type of guy that might just do it.
yeah. How many viewers do you got?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hey, that goes back to giving the people that are below you a chance.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
only below you, but the people that are just starting out, a chance. Obviously, you pour in, you give back to people. Um, Chad, I've really enjoyed our time today. And your story, it's just such an amazing story of forgiveness. You're an entrepreneur. You're funny. You've got a lot of great things. So I wanna ask you. This will be my final question. What is next for Chad?
Yeah.
Where do you see Chad going? What are you planning to go after? Ambitions, things that you want to do. Give us a sneak peek of what's next, if anything. You might just say, "Hey, I'm where I'm at, and I love it." But also, you're an entrepreneur like me, so you're always kind of got that tick going. And, what could be next? So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I really, for 20 years, so I started doing comedy just kind of out of a not a mistake. We were doing during Hurricane Katrina, so a few years ago.
yeah,
They were doing a devotion every night at I went down with the North Carolina Baptist men. A guy challenged me at the shop. He calls it North Carolina. I mean, he was from there. He's has the accent, the whole thing, and he says, "Hey, Chad, when are we going down there?" So I just said, "Hey, whenever you want." He goes, "Let's leave this weekend." So we drove and we went down there. Well, I'm sitting there and listening to this devotion time, and these guys are just telling horrible stories, and of it was a horrific time, right, for a lot of people. But I'm like, I look at David, who is a lot older than me, and I said, David, these guys, this is not the way I see Christianity. There is heartache, there's this, but we gotta lighten this up. He said, get up there. So I was used to entertaining 10 to 15 people at the barbershop all the time, so I just went for it. And so I started talking about this guy that had this donkey out at this place that we were working at, and how he was like a talking donkey. And I mean, so I just started telling stories about that. And guys said, "Hey, I would like you to come speak at our church. I'd like you to come speak," thinking I did that. So I did that, and I actually sold my barbershop, went full time, and these are, I'm going to just share a little more, and maybe this was meant to be, but so I questioned God, like, okay, God, what do you want me to do? I want to be in the ministry full time, but I really like the comedy aspect of it. So I sold my shop. I was getting booked. I was doing stuff in North Carolina, South Carolina. Ken Davis was the big guy at the time for Christian comedians. I went and did some things there at Billy Graham Training Center with him.
wow.
Met some really cool guys. And there was a point in my life that God saved me from me through wanting this so bad. I wanted to be this Ken Davis, right? I mean, man, he at the time, his son-in-law at the time was from Cheyenne. We hit it off. We got to talk. He was flying in show $25,000 a show back then, I mean, just some cool stuff. Well, we ended up, can you still hear me? Okay. So we ended up, I flew into a place, and it was the first time I was recognized. I showed up to this hotel, and this gal said, "Oh, you're the comedian that they hired." And it was going to be a big youth rally. And so I was excited, but there was something in me that changed, and it became more about who Chad is and who Chad wanted to be than it was about let's entertain Christians, let them laugh, and let's leave them with something. And so at that moment, God put the brakes on, and I was bitter for like 2 years over it. I mean, I was mad at God, like, why would I sell my business? Why would I do all of this for you not to make this work? and only because of those times and because of people could have told me whatever, but it came to the point is because Chad, you made it about you. So it's still something that scares me to death. I'll be honest with you, because it's so easy, especially in the comedy world, where it has to be, or the speaking, it has to be about me because that's who you're hiring. But it scares me to death that I would get to that peak and it would still be about me and it's not about God. And so that scares me. But so there again, I'm at a point now where I built another website. I'm getting ready to record something. I think towards the end of the month will be the first time I've actually recorded comedy for a long time. And
Awesome.
so yeah, so I'm excited about that. I'm scared because vanity, vanity.
Right, right.
I I don't want to get to the end of this and go, okay, way to go. Now you've built this, whatever this would look like. In fact, this integrator, I spent a lot of money to try to get into this 10X program, and I told him, I said, I can't be all about the money. And he goes, you know what? Then let's make this be a year that if you can afford it, you go do the show for whatever they can pay, and we'll see what God does with that. Because it was still on my mind, because when it has to be around Chad, and you know, I mean, when you spend tens of thousands of dollars to create podcasts, to create different things, it has to be, even though underlining, I want people to see Christ in me, there's a fear in that for me of going, it has to continue to be around him. I think I'm mature enough. I'd like to think I could handle winning the lottery. I don't know if I really could though. So that's what my future, I mean, my future would be like, I'm going to continue to be here. Um, we'll see what God does with it. If he allows me to step out and do more comedy, and fund it, or if I'm going to stay right here. But as of right now, that's what I'm doing. I'm speaking. We're still doing shows. Uh, but they've been a lot more local, because I can drive to them. I could do them for cheap. Where everything costs so much to hire a comedian now. I mean, those same guys that are at a $25,000 honorarium 20 years ago when I started, they're getting $150,000, $250,000 to speak. These big names are, people have no idea what it costs. I mean, some of these big names you see on stage, it's $1 million for them to come speak. And so when I was, and now I'm not anywhere near, I'm like at I'm like, it still has to be funded. Like I can't
Yeah,
fund
yeah.
like hotel room, rent a car, set up a display, but at the same time, that's what my desires of my heart would be, is to allow me to kind of do something I've pursued for 20 years. But I walked away for a long time because I finally came to a point to where I'm like, okay, Lord, it's all about you, and it was about me, and I'm sorry that I was like this, and create in me a new heart, Lord. And then to get to a place to where I'm at now, and then for some reason he put that back on my heart, and I'm like, okay, Lord, but I can't do it like I did when I was 20. And so that's what I like the future to look like. But I'm at a place that it really, if I never get to build the house, Nick, if I never get to stand on a big stage, if I never, I hope that people see Christ in me, and I'll continue walking with whoever reaches out to me through life, and Bible studies, and that's what my future will look like.
I absolutely love that. Absolutely. It was such a great answer. And thank you for the history of why, of your start with comedy and everything. I think that, I think,
I was going to do this earlier.
shameless plugs, shameless.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, this buddy of mine right here, he owns this company. He's a great godly guy. I'm telling you what, if
Uh,
you're in the one,
I have lots of great people that run it, and there are some really good partners in it now. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Speaking engagements, I've been sequestered to do some speaking as well, and you got to pay the airline fee to get there. You've got to pay hotel. You've got to have food. And, and so for a lot of these, we're, especially with people that are just starting out, you're spending all that money 100% out of your own pocket to go. There is no ROI. So you truly are doing it just for the love. Like, if I don't ever make a dime off of podcasting, that's fine. I want to do it. I feel God's leading me to do it, and I'm going to enjoy doing it. And I think that the same would be, of the speaking stuff, because that's what I feel like God is pushing me and calling me. But you still have to be able to fund it. You still have to be able to, and who knows, maybe the restoration company continues to fund it, and I can just go and do stuff for lower cost, or or however. And that's I really like, though, how you said it's not about Chad, it's about him, and I need people to Christ through me. So such important stuff. Chad, I really enjoyed our conversation today. I think you've given our viewers a great look at what you do, your love for Christ, your love for others, which is unsurpassed and just amazing. And I definitely want to have you back on, and I'm sure our viewers will too, as we continue this journey and be able to learn more about you and what you do and who you are.
Can I throw out, because I like to just shake you up a little bit, like with the faithful stuff. So I also want to do a shameless plug, and you can edit all this stuff. It's be fun, but like, I know you have a book coming out. And I know, really, I mean, because then I'm going to tell you about the book that I got coming out. Just so I can shamelessly do that. But you're a lot further in your book. So just tell everybody what in your book and what it's about.
Oh, you kind threw me on a spot there. I was
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So I have a book coming out. It will be out in the next few months. It got picked up by a publisher, so we're working with the publisher to get launch dates, get all the editing phases done, get everything correct. I'm really excited about it. It's called Never Say Die, which, if you know me, there's an 80s theme to that. Never Say Die. Goonies, Never Say Die. This book it's essentially about how God had me reset my business a little over 6 years ago and go from what I thought was weeks, maybe a month of being able to run, and then probably having to maybe end up closing the doors forever, to scaling to over 8.5 million gross in 3 years. And I don't like to brag. I don't like to talk about numbers, but I really felt like God wanted me to put that, because I think that just shows what God did. Yeah. He took this broken business owner who was I was ready to throw in the towel. And we used to joke, because of how quickly it turned around when I changed the culture in my business. We used to joke, oh, I'm going to write a book about this someday. Yeah. And so I did. So that's coming out. I'm really excited about it, because I think it's going to give people a different perspective on business. It's riddled with pop culture stuff from the 80s and 90s, maybe even some 70s stuff. So it's very relatable. It's a fun read. It's an easy read. It's not your typical how-to book. It gives you all the secrets of how I believe we did it. Obviously, the faith being the most important, but it also has a lot of fun with using, pop culture to analyze and relate stuff. So thanks for asking about that. I'm really, really blessed to have been able to do that. And I did not know you were working on a book. Why don't you tell everybody out there about what you're doing with that?
Well, to be honest, mine's never going to be picked up by a publisher, but I have worked on a Bible study for years, but I joke about writing a book, and it's going to be for newly engaged couples, and it's going to be very simple. It's going to be like on the first page. The way it's going to be set up is like, you answer it now, and then in 5-year increments, you get to see how your answers change. And so number one, it will be like, does his chewing drive you nuts? and then It's going to be called For Better or Worse, believe it or not. Does this chewing drive you nuts? And I can just imagine the answers. At very first, it's like, oh no, my stud muffin, he chews perfectly, and all this stuff. And then you're going to flip the page, and it's going to say, it will. And then, like the next question might say, does the way he walks through the house annoy you? And then it's like, oh no, Snookum walks perfect. He's just all good. Oh, I love my baby. It will. And then at the end, maybe they're like, does your precious girlfriend not feel good a lot, like in the evenings, towards bedtime? Does she get kind of sickly a little bit towards? She will. So I, so those are just things that I think it's going to be a bestseller, to be honest with you. I think that
that's actually a great idea. I love it. I love it.
And then a hotline where you can either respond just for my own entertainment, respond like year 10. I can't believe that Schnookums really annoys me the way he walks through. I mean, whatever. I mean, it's just a made up comedy bit that I do. But those are the things that it might come out. It might come out.
Hey, I mean, if it does, I'll be the first to, put that on there. Strong marital advice from Chad, who's been married 3 years, who will tell you everything that does not bug you now as a newlywed, it will.
Yeah, it will. Yeah, that's right. Believe it or not. So, no, I really am looking forward to your book. I don't mean to take away the hard work that takes.
No, I love that. No, a lot of people are excited about reading it, and we really hope to have had it out by December. But when you start trying to rush stuff, and it doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right, and so we've had to kind of pull back the reins a little bit and let God work with this, going through this process. So when it comes out, it'll be not Nick's timing, but it'll be when God's ready for it to be out. And this didn't sound like, well, Nick doesn't have control over no, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm meaning is that when God knew decades ago that I'd write a book and it would be out on this date. Okay. What I'm saying is that I'm not going to push to get it out fast just because Nick wants it out fast, or just because Chad's really excited to read it and Nick wants to sell one copy of his book. And Chad said he's going to be the first guy to buy it. So that has nothing to do with it. I would rather it be done the right way and get released when the timing is perfect for it. So, which, I'm thinking within probably next 2 to 3 months. So I'm really excited about that. And there's going to be a lot of exciting things, coming up for me. And I think even some opportunities that maybe down the road for me to be able to work with you and your comedy and bring you up on some stage and let you entertain a crowd. So I think that you're a very funny guy. So I think that'll be a lot of fun to do that. So, Chad, I loved our time together. I'm going to leave you with a couple thoughts and leave our viewers with a couple thoughts that I love. Love everyone always, which I already know Chad does a fantastic job of doing that. And may the best of your past be the worst of your future.
All right, brother. I appreciate you.
I appreciate your time. And Chad, I'm going to look forward to diving in with you again, very, very soon. And I'm excited to have you as the official first guest. And we covered a lot of good stuff. So again, I really thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Nick. Have a good one. We'll talk later.
You too. Thanks, Chad.